Yeah. How can someone get the balance between having patience and waiting upon the Lord and rolling up your sleeves and getting things done?
Well, that's a great question. I think we have to say um, pray and paddle are the nomenclature in my family. So we were on a river one time in a canoe with young kids, and suddenly we recognized the canoe in front of us had gone over a waterfall, and we didn't know how, because we were behind them on the river. We did not know how far down the waterfall was, and so my instruction to my wife and my children in the canoe was paddle, paddle. And my wife was saying, pray, pray. And so I said, paddle and pray. you know, you have to work at this as well as pray for God to do his work, right? So when we roll up our sleeves, we are recognizing God has called us not just to sit back and let, well, God will fix whatever it is, so I don't have to work it. No, we roll up our sleeves. We apply our energies and efforts, but at the same time, we pray that God would fulfill his purposes in our life. And so the old line was, if God is calling us to fulfill his purposes, he can almost always steer a car in motion better than a car that's standing still. So what do we understand? If God is calling us to serve him, we roll up our sleeves and we work hard, right? But it doesn't mean that what God intends will happen right away, right? So we have to be patient. Now, it doesn't mean we just stop working. No, God still steers a car in motion better than the car that's standing still. So we have patience for God to fulfill his purposes in our lives, in our work, but still we work. We still roll up our sleeves because we know as we are doing what God intends for us to do, then God will open the right doors. God will steer us in the direction we should be going. We don't just fold our hands and go to sleep and say, God, you go fix it, right? We apply ourselves as best we're able to what God calls us to do this day, and then trust that God will open the doors, steer down the right paths in his providential timing in the way that becomes best. But we don't just fold our hands and go to sleep, say, well, God needs to fix it. I don't have to try to get a job. I don't have to try to pay the rent. God will just, God may be actually teaching you need to get a job and pay the rent.
Yeah.
And then he can do far more down the road with what he's calling us to do.